Okay, today we're here with Ashley and Cade Clark. No relation. She married into that last name, but I was actually really happy you did. Because it felt like we're kind of related.
This one. No relation.
Yeah. Well, you're not related. That might be a little weird, but this is Ashley.
Would be weird.
This is Ashley and her husband that she married, not related to. Oh my gosh. I'm not even going to edit this out. It's too good. So we have a long history. Ashley, I've known for a long time. How many years has it been?
Oh, probably
Like
15.
15-ish years. Yeah.
That long?
Yeah, it's been
was like
a long
1 or
time.
2 years old.
yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
actually
Maybe it was like
I
3.
think he was like 3 going on 4. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like yeah.
just
Anyway,
turned
it's between
16.
10 and 15 years. It's been a while.
Yeah.
But we've been close and good friends for a long time, and I've seen just a huge life change. And this is so I was just telling you before this, when I thought about doing a podcast, my whole reason of even wanting to do a podcast was not like, oh, I want to do a podcast. Let me think of some people to have on there. I was like, no, how do I get the message of my brother overcoming drug addiction? And then I thought of you next. How do I let people know that there is hope and let these families know that there's hope? And then I was like, okay, I'm going to do a podcast because I want to do a podcast that helps people.
Yeah.
So with that, I'm just going to let you tell me, and then we'll get to Cade too, but I want you to tell me a little bit about your story.
Okay. So I grew up in a really wealthy family and I had a good childhood. I had 2 older sisters and an older brother, and my dad was a business owner. My mom was a nurse. We didn't grow up in the church or anything like that. I mean, I was baptized when I was 12.
Meaning the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Yes.
Okay.
And I was baptized when I was 12. Normally you get baptized when you're 8, but it wasn't our family wasn't really in a hurry to do all of those things. But really tight-knit family, aunts, uncles, we all hung out a lot. And then my brother was molested by a Utah County sheriff for many years. And so when I was 5 and he was 15, he died, and they said that it was from suicide. And then when I was 18, so 13 years later, there was a big court to do, and it came out that he had been molested for many years. So that's really, looking back in my life and my childhood, that's the only traumatic thing that I ever remember experiencing or going through, besides death of grandparents or anything like that.
That's a big thing to go through, though.
It is, and our family doesn't talk about things, so we just never talked about it, you know? And so when I was growing up, I was really overweight. That's probably where most of my issues stemmed from. I was really heavy from that point forward. And I was really bullied in school. I hated school so bad. And I was so smart. I was on the honor roll, had 4.0, but I hated going to school. People were just so mean, and I feel like I didn't fit in anywhere.
Sad.
Yeah, that's just, it's still hard. I think back about my life and the things that I've done and things that I've been driven to or whatever, and I think there's so many people that have been worse off than me that ended up in the point that I did. How come I went that way? But I think it's not really all about what happens to you. It's about how you perceive things and how you feel about them. So I probably started getting into, I was always that friend that all of my friends were I was the fixer. and all of my friends were on drugs and came from broken homes or whatever. And I just wanted these people to have a good life and know that like somebody loved them and that they were worth it. And so I would bail people out of jail. I would go visit people in jail. I would visit them in rehab and write them letters and stuff. And I didn't understand why. So they would get out and then everything would be great. And then they'd go back to drugs. And I didn't understand why they were choosing drugs over me. So that again made me feel worthless, kind of.
Yeah.
And so just hanging out with the wrong crowd for a long time, I started doing drugs, probably dabbling when I was around 17. And
When you say dabbling, like, what were your gateway drugs?
so I was never really like into alcohol, but I would drink it. And my dad owned a gas station. So I was like,
Beer around.
Yeah, for
I could readily get that for you, you know? And that kind of made me fit in, you know, when to go to parties or whatever. And smoking weed,
yeah.
you know, I had a point where I would smoke weed
You did?
here and there. Yes, you know that.
I didn't know that you smoked weed.
This changes everything now.
I really didn't.
He's
We've
rethinking
talked
everything.
about this so many times.
Have we?
Yes.
Okay.
He's like, I wasn't listening.
Never is. So I smoked weed and then I don't know, I just like the way that things made me like not care about what people thought about me.
Yeah.
And I had I had a gastric bypass, which is a surgery to help you lose weight.
Yeah.
And I was one of the youngest people that they had ever done it on at the time. I was 16.
Holy cow. Yeah.
And so I had some big surgeries and then I had my gallbladder removed after that and stuff. And I had a lot of pain pills and I didn't really like the way that they made me feel. So I just didn't take them, but I kept them. And also you have to think my mom was a nurse at the time. And I mean, she was a nurse for 40 years back when if somebody left the place where she worked, they would just throw their medication out. Nothing was controlled.
Yeah.
So we just had a medicine cabinet full. I mean, I don't even know if there were any medications in there with our names on them.
Wow.
They just had everybody else's names on them. It was just a different time. And so I grew up thinking there was a pill to fix everything.
Wow.
You know, a surgery to fix everything, a pill to fix everything. And so people started kind of finding out like that I had pills and started including me more.
Wow.
And so I kind of saw that was, you know, that was my in. And then I got pregnant when I know I'm skipping a bunch of things, but I got pregnant when I was 20 and I had a little boy when I was 21 and I was living with my parents at the time and I was drinking heavily with some friends before and after he was born. And then I got cleaned up for about a year and a half. But while I was pregnant with my son, my first child, I started getting really bad headaches. So they put me on painkillers, which I had to take because I was a new mom and they were debilitating headaches.
This is while you were pregnant?
No, this was, while I was pregnant, but you could take them a certain amount while you were pregnant.
Yeah.
But it really, after I gave birth, I really started getting chronic migraines and things. And that's really what led to my whole downfall is
It always starts with the pain pills.
pain pills.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It always does. That's what Josh, my brother, he said the same thing when he was using heroin. He met with so many, I mean, that's all you're around is heroin addicts, you know,
Yeah.
when you're using. And he said, I've never met anyone who didn't start with pills, prescribed pills.
I don't think I've ever met anybody either working in treatment centers and things like that. It's just,
Well, you just don't. You don't make that jump
no.
without it.
Yeah.
Because you start going through all of your prescription
Scary.
and then you find someone to buy them from, and then they run out, and so you're sick and you need them, and then you find
Cheaper.
heroin and it's so cheap, and that's just
Yeah. That's exactly,
yeah,
yeah.
it goes from there. So that's kind of, I mean, up until the last 7 years of my life, I guess that's kind of, I went to rehab my parents adopted my son when I was 4, when he was 4, and I moved out, and because I just wasn't a hands-on mom, I was too sick or too tired or too irritated to do anything because I was so addicted at that point
Yeah.
that he was better off being taken care of by them. And I did go to rehab in 2013, I think it was. And the only reason I went to rehab that first time is because my car was out of gas. I didn't have any money. I was sick. It was winter and my heater didn't work in my car. I was homeless, and I went home to ask my dad for help, and I think it was Thanksgiving or something like that, and he told me that they didn't want anything to do with me, which up until this point they had just enabled me the whole way. And he told me to leave. He wasn't going to help me, and my sisters, I guess, were crying and said, "You can't just let her go on the street." So they put me in a hotel for like a day or two and then took me to rehab. And I don't think I ever got to make that decision for myself that I wanted to quit. Yeah. And so I didn't really change the person I was while I was in rehab. And then I went to sober living. And I think I was sober for about 10 months. I didn't really change who I was or like my view on things or anything like that. I just stopped using. So inevitably I went back.
Yeah. Can I ask something? How do you go 10 months? Like, because the first part, detoxing is, from what I've heard, is so hard.
Yeah.
And then you're clean for 10 months. Are you still craving it at 10 months, or like what makes you go back?
I don't think I was craving it at that time because I was so immersed in like the recovery community, because I was living in a sober living with 8 other women.
Yeah.
And we had to go to a meeting every single day, a 12-step meeting. So I went to a meeting every day, and then we had a 12-step meeting at our house, and we had random drug tests and things like that. So it kind of just got to the point where I just stayed clean because I had to. And I got my car back. My dad gave me my car back, and I got a job. And then the second that I could manipulate him that I hate this place, I hate these girls, I want to get out of here, I moved out. And I don't even know how long it took me, to weeks probably, to start using again.
I feel like it's the high.
That you miss?
Yeah, going back. Like, always trying to, I don't know. I'll let you keep going, but I feel like it's like you're missing something. Like, you just can't quite, like, searching for that high.
Yeah, I
Like,
think
that was my
that
problem.
does definitely ring true with me in certain points. However, I do remember the first time I went and picked up, because I equated being pretty with being skinny, and being skinny with doing drugs, because it's the only way I ever really got there and got like attention and everything. So I do remember the first time that I went and picked up drugs after being sober for 10 months. I thought about these pants. I was sitting in a parking lot waiting for a phone call, and I thought about these cute pants that I had in my closet that I couldn't fit into anymore because I'd gained so much weight being sober. And I got the phone call, and I drove to the person's house to go and pick up drugs. And I remember thinking, I wonder how long it'll take me to fit back into those pants.
It's depressing.
And I remember, and that was,
So sad.
10 years ago, 11, something like that. And I still remember that clear as day, thinking that. But I think I was just so uncomfortable in my body, and I didn't love myself. And now that I'd moved out of this house where I had created great connections with the women, but I was already trying to figure out ways. The relapse always starts before the relapse, like you try and figure out ways to work around certain things and manipulate situations and stuff. So, and I think I just felt so uncomfortable in myself and so alone that I started isolating and stuff. I think I knew where I was going before the 10 months even hit. So I went back to that, and I mean, oh my gosh, for years, and things were just really, really bad for years. And then,
How bad?
oh my gosh, homeless. I was sleeping in, my dad didn't want to. I relied on my dad for everything. My dad was my best friend, bless his heart. He just loved me so much and wanted me to make it and to succeed and to be happy, that he, to the detriment of his relationship with my family, because my family would get really mad at him that he would give me money or do things for me. He had probably signed on so many apartment buildings that I had gotten kicked out of or in trouble for. So he rented me an RV in an RV park at a KOA, and I lived there. Didn't have a job, lived at the KOA. I got raped right before I went to treatment.
Is that just by nature of the people you're around?
Yeah. I mean, you hang out around a certain type of people for so long, bad things are going to happen. But I just want to say to anybody else listening that just because you put yourself in certain situations doesn't mean that you deserve it, doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt, doesn't mean that it doesn't affect you.
Right.
And whether I put myself around those people and those situations to have those things happen, it still affected me and my life and how I carried on,
did.
you know? So, oh my gosh,
How many
just,
times did you relapse? Because I remember, well, when was it? Okay, when I met you, let's see, was that your third time getting clean? Or was
oh my
that,
gosh, I couldn't even tell you. I couldn't, probably, so I was on, before I had my son, my story's so jumbled and it's all over the place.
No, you're
And
fine.
another thing with drug addicts is you're always in such a state of mind where you're just like, reality is not reality, that
Right.
going
Yeah.
over a timeline as a drug addict and trying to
hard to
like
do.
pinpoint
Yeah.
years, timelines, things that you did, or it's so difficult because like half the time you don't even realize you're like living in a dream, you know,
Yeah,
or
you're
a
just
nightmare.
surviving.
Yeah.
That's
That's true.
what it is.
I know before I had my son, I was working at a truck stop and I got into meth because I had a friend coming into the truck stop. They would come in and play card games late at night, and I was working a graveyard, and I started dating this girl's cousin, and that's how I got into meth, and I lost weight so fast. And this is before any of like the really heavy pill usage or anything like that. This is just like around drinking or smoking weed. And I lost tons of weight and I felt so good about myself. Like I looked so cute. I had new clothes. I had this boyfriend, had all this energy. So I started doing meth, and I mean, my life just fell apart pretty quickly. But after I did that for probably close to 2 years, I did sober up for about a year and a half, and then I got pregnant with my son. And so that was one time that I got sober. And then the pills and the heroin and everything started. I remember when I had never been addicted to anything, so I didn't really know what to expect. But I remember my parents, I mean, they knew I was doing stupid things anyways. I was doing pills at the time, and so they went on a family vacation and I stayed home because I had to work, but they took my son with them. And so I was home alone at their house because I was living with them. And I remember I called, I texted a friend of mine, or my friend texted me, and it was probably like 2 p.m, and I was so sick. And I was just laying in bed. I felt like every bone was breaking in my body. I was like hot and cold sweats, just my stomach, diarrhea, stomach aches, just, it was awful. And my friend had texted me and asked me if I needed anything, you know, like if I needed any
Yeah.
drugs. And I had told him, oh my gosh, I've been trying to get a hold of you or whatever. Is there any way you can come by? I don't know what is wrong with me, but I am so sick. And they said, well, when was the last time you had something? And I told them, and it was probably like a day or two before that. And they said, well, you're going through withdrawal. And I was like, what do you mean? You
It's so
know,
weird.
I
The
didn't
first
even have
time. It's weird.
any idea. Like, I just thought I had the flu, but really, really bad. And he said that to me, and I was just like, what have I done? You know? So I think,
Did it feel at that point already like it was too late? Like you already needed something?
That's when you
oh, yeah,
recognize
there's no
your
way that I wouldn't have gone and got something because,
Yeah.
because I mean, it's just the physical and the mental, I mean, the anguish that you go through, not only physically, but mentally and emotionally. Getting sober is hard because not only are you sick for a few days and like, it's excruciating
I've heard.
pain and the feeling, but to me, like, that's not even the worst part. It's your feelings and your emotions start coming back because you've been numb for so long. So you start thinking about what you've done to your kids, what you've done to your family, the things that you've said, the things that you've stolen. Oh my gosh, now I've got these bills to pay. Now I don't have a job, and now I got to explain to them why I'm not, and it's like, it's just the ultimate depression. It's just this dark, I mean, addiction is a dark hole anyways, but it's like, to get out of it, you have to climb deeper into like a dark hole before you start getting out. And for a lot of us, when we do get out of it, then because you run from your problems while you're using, you don't pay bills, you don't go to court, you don't pay traffic tickets, you run
it's
from the
harder getting
law.
sober.
So you
Yeah.
get sober and you're
Responsibility.
like, oh my gosh, I remember the first DUI I got, I slept for like a day and a half. And I woke up to my mom coming downstairs and yelling at me. And she's like, well, your brother-in-law called me and everybody, because they used to have this newspaper for like $1 at the gas station that anybody in Utah that had gotten a mugshot, their picture was in it.
Yeah, I remember
That is so awful.
Yeah, it was too.
Yeah. So my brother-in-law worked at a really hoity-toity, like, special place, I guess. And so they were all embarrassed because somebody at his work had said, isn't that your sister-in-law?
Oh,
And so he called my sister and told her, and my sister called my mom and so my mom came downstairs and was just screaming at me and was like, so everybody knows and blah, blah, blah. And she was so embarrassed because, again, we don't talk about things as a family. We just like pretend they're not there. So I remember waking up on the couch and just thinking, oh my gosh, I got a DUI yesterday. Now I don't have a license. My car's impounded. I lost my job. Like, I spent all of my money on drugs. Now I don't have a car. How am I going to get more drugs? It is like the weight
it's a
of the
prison.
world.
That's an actual prison.
Yeah.
to put yourself
Yes.
in.
The weight of the world when you start sobering up, it just like hits you. Everything that you have to face now. And it's so terrifying. So I know that
But worth it, right?
yes, it is. I mean, but it does get worse before it gets better in
Totally.
92% of the cases probably. But I remember when I lived with you, so my parents had adopted my son and I had lived there for a while and things were just not working out. So they kicked me out and I lived with a cousin of mine for a while, and then she ended up having to kick me out because her husband, they're not together anymore, but he didn't want me living there anymore. So I ended up finding a place to live, and that's where I met you. And I think that was my first time. I was on Suboxone, which is an opiate blocker.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first like sober experience from drugs, from opiates.
And
That's
that
when I met
lasted
you.
that was like 8 to 10 months, right? Or how long?
I was probably 6 months sober when I was 6 months sober when I
Yeah,
met you because
You
I
were.
remember
You said that.
I had this beautiful girl opens the door and I have to tell her like, hey, I want to move into your place, but let me just tell you that no, it wasn't 6 months. I was 54 days sober. One of the times, I don't know, around that, we had been having a conversation and somebody came over from the church and you were like, can I tell them? And you're like, this girl's like 54 days sober. Maybe it was 6 months. I don't know. Again, with the timelines, I don't know. Post-pregnancy brain. So, but that lasted a while. And then after we lived together for a while, I started relapsing. And I can't even remember really when that started or how. I think a lot of it was to do with the fact that I was trying so hard and I couldn't see my son. And it was the first time that I had ever not been able to see him. And I think I just felt really,
I remember that eating
Yeah.
you alive and talking about that all the time. That was really, really hard for you.
yeah, I felt really out of place. And that was really hard for me. And I don't remember, that was a long time ago, but I know that played a big part in.
For sure. And something I was thinking of is like, I mean, this is such a tender and sensitive subject because I'm not advocating that people invite people into their houses who have had serious drug addictions. I've never done that since or before.
Yeah.
But I remember when I opened my door, I knew there was a girl coming to rent a room,
Yeah.
And you walked in and we started talking and I just
My
felt
PO's
this.
going to stop by.
Yeah. It's like, well, you were really upfront with everything.
Yeah.
You did tell me like everything right then and there. And I think normally I probably been like, okay, well, okay, I'll let you know,
Yeah.
but like I felt this overwhelming love for you. And I don't know why, I just knew you're supposed to live there. And I told you, the other roommates were like, what? You did
Yeah.
what? I'm like, I'm sorry, you guys. I just know she's supposed to live here and, whatever. And of course everyone loved you, right away.
Yeah.
But like, when you don't know anything and that's all you know is like, oh, I'm
Well,
inviting someone.
even now, I'm like, if somebody came and told me that, I'd be like, I'd be a little bit leery,
Totally,
but
yeah.
Wow.
it was
Totally.
God totally working
Oh,
in that.
Yeah,
totally
that's
it
cool.
was.
I remember looking for places online and there was like, that house was not on the page. I think I've told you this before. It was not on the page and something happened with my computer. It like shut down or something and I rebooted it and it opened right back up to the page and yours was the top one.
Wow.
And I was like, that's so crazy. I remember thinking then that it was crazy because I'm like, oh my gosh, Lehigh, I never saw this one. I'm like, that was not there. So, I mean, I know that, and for other people struggling out there, family members or anything, just because somebody gets sober and doesn't stay sober doesn't mean that they don't get things during that time. Because that point in my life, living with you and being introduced back into the gospel and going to church and taking the sacrament for the first time in, like 12 years or something like that. And the friendships that I made living with you and having somebody love me despite my past was so crucial to me staying alive, seeing that somebody believed in me. Like, besides my dad, no, I'm stuck crying. Besides my dad, seriously, you were probably the only other person ever in my life that has loved me no matter what.
Thank you.
Despite everything. And
I
that
do love you.
was totally God working in my life because I knew that I needed to live there, and
You're a special person. Sorry. This isn't about
Yeah,
me.
you're gonna make me cry
Thank
too.
you.
I cry
Sorry.
usually.
Thank you for that. It's so nice. This
Yes.
isn't about me, but that's so nice. But you're obviously very loved. We all are because it was so apparent the second I started talking to you. It's like, it was so funny because you tell me like, I've been clean for however many weeks. I'm like, check. You're like, I have a PO that's gonna be stopping by. Check. Awesome. Keep going. It was so funny because on paper, if someone would have told me that, I'd been like, yeah, hard no.
yeah.
But everything you're saying, I was like, sounds great.
Yeah.
It just felt so right. And you look back and in this situation, in every situation I've ever seen in my life or even heard people talk about their lives, God is there. He's real. He is orchestrating things. He loves you. He is attentive to your needs. It's just sometimes a matter, in my opinion, a matter of, are we listening? Are we following? Are we doing those things, Sorry, go on.
You're okay. Well, with you saying that, I think that I always searched I think my dad had to love me because he was my dad,
And he really loved you. I spoke with your parents.
I know you did. You told
When
me
I had
was
to
on
kick
drugs.
you out.
Yeah.
I was so mad at the time, but in the back of my head, I was like, Oh, she's such a good friend, but I hate her so much.
To give a little bit of a reference, I ended up having to kick her out. This is really sweet about my husband too, which I mean, no one ever sees him on this podcast or anything, but he's an awesome guy. But we were dating at the time, and I had just one crazy spiritual experience after another. This is probably I'm going to share this. It's a little personal, but I had told you about this one. I didn't know that you were back on drugs at all, but I had had a dream the night before. I had this dream, and it was you were on drugs, and it was a really dark dream, and it was just I don't normally have dreams like that. I'm not like, anyway. But then the next day, I went into the kitchen, and I had this super strong thought in my head, like impression, this feeling, I don't know, voice, whatever it was something that said, if she's on the, because you're on the phone talking to someone, if she's on the phone talking to someone named Chris, she's back on drugs. I don't know who Chris was.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden you're like, okay, Chris, I'll see you in a second. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was like, I got chills everywhere. Like, okay, this is weird. So then like, yeah. And then you left and I went and checked your room. Sorry. I like went through your room and I was like, I don't know what drugs look like.
Yeah.
I'm a little sheltered in that, but like I looked and I'm like, well, there's needles and stuff. So that must mean something. And so Sean and I talked about it and I was like, I don't know what to do. Like I love her. I want to be there for her, but like I can't have someone on drugs, on heroin, like in my house. And so like late that night, I said, will you come with me? Because I'm like, I don't know how a drug addict's going to react to me kicking them out. And so like I knocked on the door and he was waiting in the hallway. And I was like, I got emotional and I was like, Ashley, I love you. And before I even said anything, you're like, I know. And I was like, I'm sorry, but you have to be out. And then we both cried and hugged each other. And I went into the hallway and Sean was right there. And I've seen Sean cry like 3 times to this day. I've been married to him for 12 years and dated for 3 years. And that's one of the 3 times I saw him cry. He had like tears going down his face. And I was like, what's happening right now? Like, did you get a text about your family? Like, what's happening right now? He's like, no, his words were, I feel so bad for her.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that was such compassion that he just felt for you. Like, this girl who has so much potential is back in this dark place again. And anyway, so that was a tangent of when I talked to your parents because, I don't remember if they called me or if I called them, but we had each other's numbers already at that point anyway. And I remember having this conversation and like saying, I'm sorry, I have to kick her out again. And then you got clean for a little bit after that. And then it was when I was married and I had just had a kid, I think, and you were texting me asking for $25 and stuff. And I was like,
You did?
I think
I don't know, but I'm sure I did.
Yeah, it was a
I
few
asked
times.
everybody for money. I mean, some long lost aunt
You're
from Kentucky or something. I don't know. Everybody, I'm sure. That's how you always know.
Yeah,
and I remember
yeah, totally.
you had called my parents, and my dad, bless his heart, was like, "No, she's not. She's doing."
They both
really
did.
Good.
They're like, "There's no way she's not on drugs." I'm like, "Oh, she's back on drugs."
She's calling me, asking me for money.
Yeah, I'm like, "What can we do to get into rehab?" Because they're like. And they're like, no, we just talked to her. No, she's not back on drugs. I'm like, well, she asked me for the 3rd time in a week and a half for $25. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But my point of that was that they really did and do love you. And like, I just remember having these really tender conversations with your parents where they just felt such desperation. And they're asking me, they're like, what do we do? I'm like, I don't know. But I'm like, I'll keep praying. I don't know. And they're like, we don't know what to do either because it's like this keeps happening. But they love you, they love you so much. They're just like, what can we do? So having seen or at least heard a little bit of like how dark things get when you're on drugs, you lose everything. Mm-hmm. What do you say to someone who's casually starting to just, dabble a little bit in even just gateway drugs, but specifically pills for a good time?
Gosh. I don't know. We went to the movies a couple of months ago. I mean, not even.
Oh,
a
yeah,
girl,
the
she was
people
probably like 17, and
drugs in the bathroom.
I was bawling and bawled the whole way home and prayed.
Her boyfriend
that night.
didn't know though, because
Prayed
remember he
that
was
night
standing
about
outside
it,
or
and,
something.
I mean, I talked about it to Cade for just weeks. I just could not get this girl.
So
off
what
my
happened? You
mind.
walked in and saw
No,
her?
she
So
kept
we
telling
had-
me to pull over
we
so
had
she could.
gone to the movies, and before we left, I had to go to the bathroom. So Cade went and waited at the entrance, and I went to the bathroom, and while I was in the stall, there was shoes next to me. There was a girl next to me, and two things you do not forget as a drug addict, a heroin addict, are the flick of a lighter and that smell.
Yeah.
When somebody's
That's what I've
smoking
heard.
heroin. And I smelled it, and just instantly, I mean, even almost 7.5 years clean, I mean, it gives you goosebumps, and you're just like, because I mean, even though it took everything, I love it, you
Yeah.
know, and I will tell, I love that
feeling of
because,
being high, right?
yeah. I mean, who would, if drugs were like, if you didn't have
Felt
any
terrible, you wouldn't do it.
consequences, you wouldn't, yeah,
Yeah.
No
you
one
would
would
do
get
them.
clean. No.
But it gives you that instantaneous reaction. I still have that, you know, but I remember thinking, no, there's no way. Cause I had watched her walk in, and she was very cute, and I'm just like, there's no way. And so I sat there for a second, and then I smelled it again, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's smoking heroin. And I went out, and her boyfriend was just sitting there waiting for her in the hallway. And I went to Cade, and I immediately started crying. And I told him, I was like, I don't know, maybe you should pull over. I just want to talk to her. Like, I want to tell her, like, because they sat by us in the movie, like not too far from us, and she sat through a whole movie. And if you were smoking heroin and you were in the thick of it, you're not sitting through a 2-hour movie without
Well, you're
getting
not
up a
at
couple
movies.
of times. Yeah, right. You don't have money to go to the movies, but
Is that how often? I mean, that sounds probably naive, but you have to go smoke.
I mean, expect if you're smoking it, especially, it goes through your body faster.
Yeah.
You metabolize it faster. So, yeah, I mean, if it were me,
Smoking all the time.
yeah, I mean, you're just smoking all the time. So that I just thought, like, she's got to be, and these are things that I can't believe that I was thinking, you know, like, she's just starting. She's probably 17 or 18. Like, her boyfriend has no idea. She's got to just be starting, because she wouldn't have sat through the whole movie. She would have made excuses to get up because she wasn't feeling well. So, and I just kept thinking, oh my gosh, I want to go talk to her. And he's like, well, what are you going to say? I'm like, I don't know. And I was just bawling, and I'm like, she has no idea. She has no idea what she's getting herself into.
Oh.
Well, it's fun.
And yeah,
when
it's
you're
so
there,
fun
yeah.
at first. It's so fun. And it's like, I don't know.
Of course it is, or else no one would do it, right?
Yeah. So I don't know. The advice just, I mean, I don't know. It grabs you so fast that it's like, there's such a small window where you can really catch yourself, because if you have an addictive personality already, the cards are stacked against you. But it's like, you know what you're doing is wrong. I mean, whether it's recreational or not, like, it's not good for your body. It's not good for your mind. That's why they say only every 8 to 10 hours, that's why only doctors can prescribe them, you know? So,
Right.
I mean, just,
Even when I've had 6 kids, and I mean, it's rough, especially if you had a rough delivery or something, you're in pain. I'll take what they give me for a day or two, but if I don't absolutely need it, I'm not going to take it, because I love the way it feels too. I love it. I'm not one of those people like, oh, I don't like that out of control feeling, or or it makes me feel sick or something. Like, yeah, it makes me feel amazing.
Yeah, very
And I love the way it
euphoric.
feels. But for that reason, I don't want them, because I know how good that feels and how quickly I could be addicted like that, you know? In fact, there was one doctor, I don't know why, it's never with any of my other deliveries, with my third, he sent me home with 30. I don't remember what it was. It was like Lortab or Percocet or something with 30. I'm like, why do I need 30?
Yeah.
He's like, oh, just, in case you need them. And I was like, I actually ended up refusing them. And I'm like, why? So I can see how easily people, if a
It's
doctor
so
is telling me
crazy
here.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's so crazy with doctors too, because I went to the dentist. It was either the dentist or the emergency room or something like that. And I'm
Dentist.
always very open right at the beginning, because I know if they're able to like sneak it in, I'll be like, sure, I'll take them, you know?
yeah.
So, but I'm very open at the very beginning of any appointment. I let them know I'm an addict. I can't have opiates, so that I can keep myself safe. But I remember I went to the dentist, and I ended up telling him 3 or 4 times no. And throughout the appointment, he kept asking me, he's like, you sure I mean, because this is really painful. You sure you're not going to want me? I'm like,
Why?
I'm in recovery. I can't and it's just like, some people just don't get it. If you're, I would always tell people don't start. But I mean, just look at your morals and your values. And if the people that you're hanging around are doing things like that, and you have to do something like that to have fun. It's just,
It's not worth it.
oh my gosh, it's not worth it.
It's so not worth
It's
it.
so fun for a couple of months. It is. But like if you like losing your family and trust
And ruining your entire life.
yeah, half of my graduating class from high school is dead. You
And
know?
you know what? I forgot about this. When you were living with me, I swear it was every other week you were going to a funeral. And I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
what what is
Yeah.
going on in your life? It was always a different friend that had died.
And it's even worse now with fentanyl and everything. It's just
Oh,
it's crazy. So I mean, it might be fun for a couple of months and stuff, but it's like the consequences just far, I mean, they're just not acceptable for me anymore. And I'm like,
no.
would I love to? I mean, life is hard. We've had a really rough last year,
Yeah.
and life is really rough. And would I like to just check out mentally and like numb out? Yeah, but like,
But there are better ways, right? There are
right.
better
But
ways
I
to-
mean, the feeling that I get looking at my kids and knowing that they've never seen me inebriated in any way, and that like my husband, I can go to the grocery store and he knows I'm going to the grocery store.
yeah.
And if I'm gone for a really long time, he knows like something bad has probably happened to me or whatever, you know, like he can trust me, and I can make $20 last a lot longer than I used to be able to.
Yeah, you know what?
I
So
can-
tell me about that.
yeah.
Life is good. This is the happiest I've ever seen you.
Yeah.
And obviously it's hard. You have two little kids and you're pregnant, and you have your older son too, which is kind of a strained relationship, I know. And I know how much you love him and how hard that is. But like, you both are such a miracle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, tell us about these good things that have come from getting sober and going through that hell to get sober.
Well, we've been together for he was like 2 weeks out of prison. And I was
True story.
2 weeks out
I
of
remember this.
don't do this. Anybody like listening or whatever, because this is like the 1% that it actually works out. And any sponsees that I had from 12 steps or when I worked at treatment centers, I was always tell the girls like, don't do that. Don't date people from 12-step meetings or other people in early recovery. But
We never used together though.
no, we didn't. So he was 2 weeks out of prison and I was 2 weeks out of treatment, and I was in sober living and so was he. We ended up meeting
And I got kicked out.
after a 12-step meeting. He relapsed. His story goes a little bit more than mine does, but so we've been together for almost 8 years, and we just actually officially got married last year, and we have 2 little kids together, one on the way, and we're both business owners. We went through the temple last October. His dad just passed away. Both our dads passed away 4 months apart last year, and
And you're both really close with
he
your
was
dad.
right, and he was able to go and do his dad's temple work just recently, and
Yeah, that was
I don't know.
How was that?
Life is
It
good.
was cool.
Wow.
There was a time when we went in to do the endowments, it was like there was a split second where it was like the veil was so thin, it's like easier for sure. Like
You could feel it.
you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Yeah, it was really cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
Good things, all good things.
so good. You're
Yeah.
you're both at peace, and it's amazing to see. Like before we even started, I was saying to you, I said we were talking about, what did I say? I said, can we start with a prayer? And you're like, oh, I was just gonna ask that, and I just started laughing because I'm like, Ashley, if I would have known 10 years ago, like or 15 or whatever it was, that you would have been like, yeah, I'd like to start with a prayer, instead of you rolling your eyes at me when I say that, and I'm like dragging you to church and stuff. Like, it makes me so happy because you're a different person. You're at peace. You're not angry. You're not, like feeling, I mean, you had such an obvious anxiety about you all the time. And you're every time I see you now, you're relaxed. I mean, obviously we both have our heads spinning because we have a lot of young children and stuff, but you're happy. You're
Yeah.
genuinely happy and full of joy. And it's just this total miracle. So Cade, tell me about your story, because I've heard it, and you both have such a cool story that it's just amazing to see where you are, and the hope that this can give people and to family members who are worried about a loved one that is struggling with addiction, just to see that this is possible. You guys are possible. So tell me a little bit about your story.
I don't share my story very often, so sometimes when I think about what to share, it brings up certain things. But my story was the opposite of Ashley's. Like I was raised, I wouldn't exactly call it a broken home, but my mom passed away when I was 4. And so that wasn't drug related or anything like that. She was 31, I think 31 or 32. She went into the hospital complaining about her left side of her chest going numb, and they misdiagnosed her at the hospital, sent her home, gave her medications, and she had a major heart attack that night and died.
Oh no, that's horrible.
And it's really weird because I remember certain things. Like, I was only 4, so it's like,
Yeah.
how much do I really remember? But I remember that day, like, really vividly. I
Yeah, it's your
remember,
mother.
yeah, running outside because me and Weston shared a room, and I remember waking up to the lights flashing through the windows, and I ran out. So like they were trying to keep us in the back bedroom so the paramedics could come in and get my mom or whatever. But I remember seeing her go in, like just her head go in the ambulance, and then going down to my grandma's house and not understand, like I obviously know now, but running around and everybody was crying in different rooms, and I was just like, what is happening right now? Like, I didn't know that my mom had just passed away, you know? And the crazy thing is I was in, so I think I was 6, 5 or 6. How old are you when you go to kindergarten? 5 or 6?
Between 5 and 6, yeah.
But I kept disappearing, and I don't remember this, it's just what people told me, but I kept disappearing from school, and Sigalily was in Lehigh, and the Lehigh Cemetery is right up above there. But I would leave to go up to my mom's grave because I didn't understand. Like, I was still waiting for her to come back. So it was like,
So sad.
and my dad was a drinker before my mom died, and it makes sense to me being an addict now. It's like, I don't know what I would do if Ashley died, like propelling me into my drug addiction or drinking. Like, my dad really got into drinking after my mom died, and I never had, like, my dad, an alcoholic's not nurturing, so it's like
Right.
when I struggled with certain things, I didn't have somebody that I could go and talk to. And so my journey to God was kind of the other way. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't start that way young because I had a lot of resentments to God for putting me in a situation like that. Like, I just didn't understand that. And so I struggled making friends as well growing up. Like, it just didn't feel like I fit in, you know? And so, like, I figured out a way to protect myself growing up to where it was like, you just do that. I don't know. It's like your brain just figures out how to survive and to cope with certain things. So because I like created a shell, I can't figure out, like, I'm 36 years old trying to figure out how to communicate with people. You know, like,
Yeah.
there's a part in the big book that talks about, the alcoholic talks about how when he took his first drink, that it was just like all of a sudden he could just be himself, and he could fit in with people, and he could talk to girls and whatever. And that's the one story out of that book that I relate to the most. That I remember drinking jungle juice at a party when I was 16 and thinking that, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is awesome, you know? And not really realize, like you said, like, I wish I could fast forward to what that would have, the chain reaction.
Profound,
Yeah,
You wish you
what
could
my
have known
life
what
looks
that would
like.
have
Yeah,
done.
it's like, I spent a lot of the days by myself. Like, it's just like I struggled in school. My parents didn't help me with my homework. It just, that's what I did forever. And so I had different aunts and uncles kind of step in at certain times to, like, I remember, I think I was 15 or 16, and my aunt came over to my house to get me to take me to stay there. I think it was, I used to go stay there on the weekends. And my stepmom and my dad had separated, and she went to the fridge to look in the fridge, and there was just beer in the fridge, and that was all that was in the house. It was like, she's like, go get your stuff, you're coming to live with me. So I lived with my cousin. He's my same age, like we grew up together. We're not as close as we used to be, but anyways, they gave me weed for the first time. Like, they offered it to me, and I remember his mom and dad finding it and me getting blamed for it. And I remember, like, when there was something like that happened growing up, it was like, I feel like there was people that helped me, but it was like at the first sign of trouble, it was like, okay, you try now, you know? It was never somebody like
Staying.
staying and trying to figure it out with me, to where it was like, okay, well, obviously he's got some issues, so let's just, like, the stability part just was never really there. It just crumbled all
Yeah.
the time, you know?
So
So
there's like two common themes I'm already noticing, like consistency and needing someone who is actually there, you know, from a foundational standpoint, and then fitting in.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
I'm like hearing this, and I'm thinking, oh, I just want to sit down with my kids and tell them, like, find that person at school right now who seems to not have any friends or who might be a little weird, and invite them over, you know, like, let's start right now while they're in elementary school, so that they feel like they have good friends, because that makes such a huge
Yeah, it
difference.
does.
yeah.
Anyway, sorry, go on.
No, well, and I just like, so I feel like that was my life. Like, my teenage years were just, that's what it was being passed around from one house, like going to this school, going to this school, going back to this school, going to this school. And it was just like, never, I never said, and then going back to my dad's house, you know? So it was like, my dad was never really abusive towards me, but super abusive to my brother. So it was like, the siblings were really, like, me and my sister and my brother were really close growing up, because it was like all we had was each other. So when they started down, like, Weston was like 18 or 19, I want to say, when he started doing drugs. And so,
And he's older than you.
yeah, and I'm the baby. So I just remember thinking, like, okay, there goes my two supports, right? It was like almost at the same time, you know? And so it seems like every time I got in trouble, or there was something that was impactful in a negative way, that was my go-to. Like, I know I can feel better if I drink or I smoke weed, you know? So I remember, so I went to Salt Lake Community College right after high school. So my mom's sister, Millie, lived in Salt Lake. I remember taking my brother up to Salt Lake, not knowing what I was taking him up there to do. And he apologized to me later, but I took him to go get coke and heroin, and he asked if I wanted some, and I didn't even know, like, I'd never even seen heroin at the time. So, and I was like, I've already tried Oxycontin 80s, so it was like, I might as well try this too. So I remember trying that, and it didn't, I never got away from it. It was like, from the like Ashley says, like, it grabs you. And
Yeah. It's
the
an
only
instant.
thing that
You
was,
think it grabs you so fast that you think that there's not going to be a problem, and it's like 10 years later you wake up and you're like, how did I get here? But it's really like that.
yeah,
It's insane.
That's exactly what my brother said too.
Yeah.
He was like, he said by the first time he used it, 24 hours later, he felt like he was going to die without it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you just, I mean, you lose everything and you look back and you're like, it feels like it was just yesterday. You're like, what happened
Well,
so fast?
the only thing that changed was I switched to an IV user, and it was like, once I did that, it was like, and I'm not saying that it's all bad. Like, it all goes to the same place. I think you either, like, most people either die or they go to prison, like
Right.
IV drug users, or And
You
especially
never
now,
see an old drug
no, you
addict.
really don't.
No, you're
And
right.
especially now where everything's cut. And I think like 3 weeks ago, there was like 9 or 10 people that died in AA or the
There's
rooms.
8 and 6 days. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So
and I never
tragic.
OD'd. Once I got to the point where I didn't have money, and so the first time I went to prison was, I shouldn't say what I was doing, but basically I mean, I got theft by deceptions and robbery charges. Those were my charges, and that's what sent me
I
to
think this is
prison.
important to know because people need to know you start dabbling in something. It's not like you just start, I was relaxing and doing drugs and no big deal and it didn't harm anyone. No, you start stealing. That's immediately what happens next.
Yeah, and I remember going like they let me go to treatment once, and my stipulations were that I so this is how crazy the addiction is even knowing that I had prison hanging over my head, I still went back to the drug. Like, I either did the 90-day treatment program or I went to prison, and I chose prison. So, and I remember going through those gates for the first time when you go through Draper, thinking like it had really grabbed me for that long to where that was the first time that I opened my eyes to my addiction and thought, holy cow, where has this taken me? And sitting in UNF5, that's so when you go into prison, you go, it's all old bars. So like
Like old school.
old
jail.
school, yeah. And there's just, you're not in a county jail. It's like they're violent criminals there. Like I remember they give you this paper and you sign where to send your body if you die. And that's when I was like, this is freaking crazy. So getting out of prison was was it the first time that I got out of prison that I met you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I met her at an AA meeting at
I
Don
got him
Marie's.
sent back to prison.
No, you didn't get me sent back to prison. I got myself sent back to prison, but
Yes.
I ended up emailing you when I was in
That
prison.
was the second time.
I went back to prison twice. I did 28 months is what I did total.
28 months.
28 months, yeah.
Wow.
So, and I'm just going to say what changed my life.
Yeah.
My family gives her the credit. Like, and it was that way for a long time. Like, there's been some issues with my family with her, and my kids. Like, you have to find something. I feel like you have to find something that, like, I don't know. Like,
It fills that hole. Like you say that I'm so happy and I used to be so anxious and so like nervous and stressed out and angry all the time. It's because A, I didn't love myself. B, I didn't think that I deserved love and I didn't fit in. I just felt empty all the time. I just felt empty all the time. I tried to fill it with a baby, didn't work. I tried to fill it with men, it didn't work. Alcohol, drugs, and some things would work for a little while, but they never lasted. And it's like now it's to the point where like, would that be fun to do for a night? Yeah, probably. But the way that I would feel the next day would just be so devastating. And my kids' faces, just like the little things that I find joy in now, like I love my kids' laughter. I just think, and like seeing their face for the first time or showing Kate a funny video that I made of them or the funny things that they say. And I'm just like, that fills my cup. That fills the hole for me. And it's like, but what I had to find, I mean, I always believed in God and stuff, and he never left me. I left him, like I would have been dead a long time ago had he not been walking me through everything. But that hole, God was the only thing that I didn't try to fill that hole with. And now every morning I wake up and I start my day with God and everything else just goes according to plan.
How do you do that? How do you start your day with God?
I mean, it's different all the time. I mean, I'm not the best at waking up and praying or reading my scriptures and stuff. I need to get better with that, but just having a grateful heart and seeing the joy in things and looking at things positively, and prayer, scripture, going to church. We go to the temple every Friday together, and that's really been great for us.
I don't think that I can get, and I'm sure it was the same for you, but to get to a level to where I just know that God exists is when we took our kids to the temple and got sealed to Him. It's like, I've never been through something that's just so. I've been homeless and with needles stuck in my arm to hear where, like, I feel like that's my job to take my family and to get them to this place. Like, and like, gosh, it's been like this our whole relationship, and it's not been on her end, it's been on my end, you know? So I feel like I feel like I couldn't get any happier than what that was, you know? And I don't know, I mean, you can share your experience with it, but you were
Yeah.
there.
I was there.
Yeah.
That was powerful.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty special. I think that, and like I said, I've always known that God existed. And there's just, oh my gosh, if I could go back through my journey and tell you things that, like the first time I got arrested was in front of the tabernacle one night at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and the chimes were going off, which is now the Provo Temple, Provo City Center Temple. And one of the cops was like, the bells started going off, and he's like, well, somebody's looking out for you. And he handed me an LDS 12-step pamphlet. And that was the first interaction I'd ever had with police.
Whoa.
With drugs. I still have that pamphlet.
That's cool.
And that was
So cool.
almost 20 years ago. That, I mean, just so many things. I had tried to take my own life, and I was on life support for a while, and I remember what I saw and things that I felt and heard and what was happening. There's so many instances where God was still there with me, and He's like, you need to leave this house. And even when I was on drugs, and it's like,
Yeah, the
He's
Holy
always
Ghost
there. You
never
just have to
stops
be
working.
listening. And when He told me, like, do not give up on this kid, like, you cannot give up on him. And then our temple experience is one of the times I've never felt that close to God, other than when Riot, my last little baby, was born, and it was very traumatic. And I just remember it was like the lighting in the room changed. Everything slowed down, and it was like I feel like I was in a pillow. It was so weird. Like, it's so weird to describe it like that, but it was like everything, like the noises were softened. I mean, there's 50 people in the room, alarms blaring, and I just felt so warm
It's angelic.
and
That's
so
the
peaceful.
experience,
And
yeah.
I was just like, he's going to be okay. I mean, and he's over here with the CPAP on, and he's not breathing, and he's blue, and there's people everywhere. And I just knew that God was in that room and that everything was okay. And that's like the same type of experience that I had in the temple, in the sealing room, when my 2 little kids walked in their white, and it was just like nothing else existed but the 4 of us.
Your uncle and I
And
actually
it was-
talked about this afterwards. The second your kids walked in, to be sealed to you guys for eternity in the temple. I mean, it was special before that.
Yeah.
But the second they walked in, I looked around.
The kids bring it together.
Everyone was bawling, including
Yeah.
myself. Including myself. It was just like, it was an undeniable feeling. It was like a physiological response all of us were having. It was so beautiful.
Our experience is just, we are where we're at right now, and we're happy with that, and we want to keep striving and going forward with that, like going through the temple and things. There is hope, and there is a life after addiction. There totally is. Anybody, you can get clean in a crack house, if you want it that bad. And it's just, I just can't. I never thought that with my past and my history that I would ever meet anybody that would want to take me to the temple, And so the fact that we're sitting here, a felon and, you know, both homeless junkies with needles in our arms, and the disgusting things that we've been through or done or said or experienced. And we just had one of the most amazing, like the pendulum swings both ways, you know? So our lives went very, very dark, but it's never too late to turn around.
Well,
And
and I
it's,
feel like I remember before I got clean and when I went back to prison the second time that I tapped out, and God works that way. It's just I was sick all day. It was like that was my addiction. Is all right. I'm good. Like let's just go back to prison. And it was 6 hours later I got pulled over in a car and was sitting back in prison. And that's how that works. So and it's like God knows.
where
Like
your heart's at when
well,
you're
yeah, and
ready.
it's like you said, like you just knew that she needed to come stay with you, and you fast forward it 10 years, and it's like you can't put into words that plan and how that played out. That it's crazy to me.
You
It's
could never
crazy.
deny
Yeah,
God. Like,
yeah.
No.
look at this. You could never.
Looking back, it's like a movie, like how everything worked out, like everything in everything in my life and everything in our life together that led up to where we're at. It's like telling the story. It's like a movie, like how God stepped in and the things that happened or the people that we knew, and just like I don't
Well,
know.
statistically, it's almost impossible for you guys to be where you are.
Oh
It's
yeah.
almost impossible. From the statistics I see, it's like you have a 93% chance of ending up dead or, in
Yeah,
prison.
they're not very
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
It's definitely against you, but here you guys are. You're thriving and you have little kids. So I guess the message of this is there is hope.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
and for the family members of those addicts, I've been one of those people. I've been the family member of the addict, and it is so painful. I know how painful it is, but there is hope because miracles still do happen.
Yeah.
So thank you guys so much for doing this today.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you for
welcome.
having us.